Hello, it's Monday. I think I'll have two videos today. Not that I have so much to say, but it's going to be more convenient to break it into two. One last thing to say about Mozart is, I don't know if I got across to you about Mozart. He knew that he was the best. And, what do you do in a situation like that? I guess that's all I'll say. I mean, part of his obnoxious behavior was the poor guy. He was just so good, and he happened to know it. Oh, wow. Now, a little bit about the course. I've only got 20 more days to teach until we reach 180. 29 or 19 after today. And 15 of those days, or 14, are going to be before I go off on a trip to Europe. And then when I come back, I'll still have 5 days left. I'll tell you more about that as we get there. But time is getting short, and I'm aware of that. Well, because of that, the Greek, what I was still going to do with Latin and what I was going to do with Greek, I'm going to simply refer you to last year's notes. There's a website, humanitynotes.webs.com, that a student of mine, Josh Wagner, and a friend kept last year. If you'll go there and look at Greek and Latin, what I was going to do was show you how derivatives, so many derivatives that we have today, come from a certain number of Latin prefixes and Latin roots, if you would learn them. And the same thing with Greek. And this chart, I don't think I had it here available to show you. We drew something like this early in the year. But in modern English, Greek and Latin came into modern English directly, as well as through the Romance languages, through French. Given developments in science when they chose to use Latin and Greek for scientific terms. So it is very, very valuable to know those, but I can only do so much in a course like this, and so that's going to have to go. I'm still determined to teach German, and I probably will end up doing that after I come back from my Europe trip. So I got a lot to do. I basically have 14 days to go from the year 1700 to the year 2012. All right, well, in the 18th century, I like to point out to my students that now we have local history. In United States history, the written record only goes back, to about the year 1620, 1607, around there. So about 400 years. Well, here where I live locally, it doesn't go back that far. But there's something called the Whiskey Rebellion, which was important here locally. 1792 or 1794 was the first part of the United States to ever attempt to disobey the federal government. It failed. And I mention that. And I also mention a woman by the name of Indian Eve. There's a story about her. And because of that story, she wasn't an Indian. She was an immigrant from Germany, or part of France. Anyway, her story was interesting enough that a lot of people are aware that they're descended from her. Now, I use that as an excuse to show kids that they can develop a chart which has you right in the middle. I have the kids take a piece of paper and draw a line across here and write down their name right in the middle. And then do an arch like this, and here I say their father. Maybe I put a little F here. Their father's name, if they know it. And here their mother's name, if they know it. I'll say, now write that in there. And then here, if you know it, put right here your father's mother's name, and put right here your father's name, and I go F squared. And here put down your mother's father's name, and here your mother's name, if you can. And a lot of times kids cannot do that. I don't stress this too much, because there's some kids who do not know who their father was. Well, here put down your father's mother's mother. Here put down your father's mother. Whoops, I got that wrong. Your father. I guess you'd have to split this again. I'm messing the chart up. But anyway, by doing this, here you would have your mother's father's father. Here you would have your mother's father's mother, I think like that. I keep the fathers toward the middle because usually people can come up with those names quicker. Anyway, by filling this out, kids can begin to figure out who are their ancestors. And I point out that you have to go back about 13 or 14 circles to reach Indian Eve. But it just gives kids a taste of genealogy. They know that it's there. And I tell them that usually there's going to be somebody in their family who has looked into that. And kids, you know, and for some kids it becomes a lifelong pursuit then. You know how that is. There's still one other chart that I wanted to show you before I go on to the other thing. I think I talked about this chart, but I never showed it to you. You are right in the middle of it. And what I mean by this chart is there is an interpretation of history that says there are Apollonian periods of history and Dionysian periods of history. These tend to be orderly and calm, as in Apollo. These tend to be disorderly and wild. And history can be seen as swings back and forth, but the swing is never quite to the same spot. I think of Foucault, I think is the name, who had this huge pendulum in France that swings, and if you ever saw that, the pendulum doesn't swing back, it makes a slow circle. Well, from pre-agriculture to go to, some of this it's hard to really go through this. But let's pick it up, say, with the Elizabethan period. Pretty wild. Where does it go? To the early 17th century, where the Puritans really clamped down. Of course, it was a civil war. From then, you know, where does it go? Well, the late 17th century, when the Puritans lost control and England at least basically went wild, well, after that, where does it go? To the 18th century, where people at least felt that they were civilized and the mind was in control. And now we're about to swing to the Romantic period. And I guess I'll save that for tomorrow to tell you about the Romantic period. What a period that was. But all of these have left their mark on you. That's why I put you and me right in the middle. In Western civilization anyway, they have all left their mark. I foolishly used to ask kids at the end of the year, do you think you're more Victorian in your attitudes or Elizabethan in your attitudes, or are you a romantic? Well, that was, later I realized that's a stupid question, because you are everything. If you speak English, if you speak a language in Western Europe, I mean, you are marked by all of these things, and it's almost pointless to say which, how much. Maybe pre-agriculture most, because, you know, we in some ways are like cavemen. All right, I wanted you to see that chart, and I have one other thing then to deal with before I leave for today. So come back, please.